everyone, welcome to episode 3 of Flame First Cuts podcast. My name is Jyotsna and I'll be your host for this episode. Flame First Cuts is a student-run international film festival that aims at providing a platform for young student filmmakers. Today we have two amazing people joining us and they've both been significant and incredible members of Flame First Cuts. We have Tamanna Rajabali, who is an incredibly creative person, and she's currently working as a design and film freelancer. We also have Siddhi Ashar, who is an illustrator, graphic designer, and art director. Um, Tamanna and Siddhi are frequent collaborators and share their love for art and all things weird. Um, Hi, guys, and welcome to the Beanbag Archive. Um, would you like to tell us a little bit about your work and your style?
A little delayed, sorry.
Hi, I am Tamanna, and currently I'm working as a illustrator and a designer. I do freelance work with film as well, so just kind
That's
of
super
trying
cool.
to be as creative as I can right
Overall,
now.
How
yeah.
has this time been treating you? Have you felt like you've grown creatively in this pandemic time?
Uh, yeah, in a way. Um, I mean, we all had a lot of time on our hands, so I got to learn a few new things, learned how to make better illustrations, learned how a few new skills here and there. So yeah, it's been good.
Siddhi?
Oh, hi. Hi, I'm Siddhi. I am illustrator. I do a lot of graphic design, branding work right now. Used to do action when films were a thing, but in the pandemic, it's not a thing. So, yeah, just been taking a break from that, but looking to get back this year, hopefully, before I go for my master's. That's the plan for the end of the year. But yeah, it's been fun. Pandemic's been good in terms of exploring new mediums, as Tamanna said. She's been exploring clay. I've been exploring a little bit of just, yeah, whatever we can find as such. Yeah, a lot of online courses, a lot of dabbling in different things. Yeah.
Me too, honestly. I feel like over the last couple of months, I mean, initially I spent quite a lot of time just trying to like learn TikTok dances on TikTok. But now I'm learning TikTok dances from Reels. And I think, so what's super interesting is I feel like everyone's just taking to like Instagram and all of these like different apps so like nicely now. Like the other day, so we received a package in the mail and it was just something that my mother had ordered. And just because I take some like couple of film courses, I think my mother decided that I was the perfect person to ask about like lighting and things like that. Not that I had anything like very significant to contribute, but we like set it up and did like a cute reel for like her Instagram of like how she was using the product and did like a day in her life type of situation. And I think it's just so interesting to see how everyone is I guess also wants to put their stories out there today and just how just being able to access mediums like Instagram Reels or Snapchat Stories, TikTok for that matter, is just making all of us like mini filmmakers and storytellers.
Yeah, the interesting part is now your mother, who is obviously not a filmmaker or anything, she knows how to like cut. She knows like what looks good. And like she would never have learned that if it wasn't for these like short form films, I guess. Like, because you don't really think about it as much when you're going to watch a film. You're truly turning off your brain and going to a cinema. But somehow when you're doing like these really quick 10-second bits, it's so easy to know like, oh yeah, the beat drops here. I'll cut here and put another shot here. And like a zoom because it's so effective. It's so simple for anybody to pick up. Like even my parents make small reels. I'm like shocked by it.
Yeah, that's that. Instagram is the big platform right now because they've gone into like they've taken things from other platforms and made it into one this large platform that has everything on it and it's very like it's also very easy to use like if you like go on like reels and like stories and all that stuff it's very easy to use it. It's very straightforward. So yeah, everyone can use it and there are so many different ways you can tell your story. So
And it's like not just normal people using it for their what do you call it, like brands and stuff also, because those are like mini ads. But people are so creative with some of the something like tutorial is usually just so static. They do it so well with just music and like quick edits. You want to stay longer on those videos. You just want to stay longer and admire that more than I guess the makeup itself also.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be something very interesting, like oh, like
Hello.
sorry for the disturbance. It doesn't have to be something like really meaningful and deep. It can be something really simple, like we spoke about, like talking about your toothbrushes. Like you have 2 3 toothbrushes lying in your cup holder, and you're just like, you talk about them, you talk about what you think about them. I mean, you make stories up when you're sitting there in the morning, right? So that's, like, it's such a
Talking
simple
to
thing,
their
but it's so
plants.
interesting.
Yeah, people talking to their plants. Like we all named our plants, but
that's
talking to it.
that's Bobby.
Yeah, crazy.
Hi, Bobby.
So yeah, so really like I mean every single platform has it now. Like YouTube Shorts, you just can't ignore them. They're right there. You have to
Yeah,
see them.
yeah,
And it started with I would say Vine was like the big daddy of them all. As a purist of Vine and like TikTok personally, reels are very offensive. But it is very interesting to see like how all of us are obsessed with watching these like 10-second bursts on repeat at times.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think there's like a certain resistance to these like new forms of media initially. Like I remember, I mean, I don't think it was just me because I like remember having these conversations amongst like my peers and like friends and everything. I remember when TikTok started rising, everyone there was like this conversation about, oh yeah, I don't have TikTok. Yeah, it's just not my thing. I remember one time, I think I came back home for Diwali and like my mother was like constantly on TikTok. She was like fully hooked. Um, and she would like send me links to it on WhatsApp, and I was like, I'm not gonna download the app. I won't do it. It's against what I stand for. Um, but then like when I came back home like later in like December or something, I also had TikTok, and we would just sit next to each other and use TikTok.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so amazing and interesting to see how I feel like at one point of time, just like I mean, even with I think the pandemic, in addition to um these like new mediums of how like now everyone's like, you know what, like I'll also tell you what I was doing today because I've been at home and there is only so much that I can do.
I think the interesting part, like you mentioned, that your mother had it first. I think that was what TikTok did really well, and that's sort of what democratized short form storytelling, I'd say, because like Vine, it still came from the West, so we were trying youngsters trying to ape the West, I'd say, whereas TikTok came from China, which is already sort of trend thing to for people to adopt globally, and then it sort of just penetrated the tier two and the older markets, which is super interesting that it trickled down to us. Like it didn't go the usual way, which is us usually the top 1% of this country telling the stories. It was the top like the 99% telling their stories. Hence, like it was such a welcome platform across like languages, across like regions. Like even the most obscure part of India was on TikTok, and it found different versions. Like even after it's been banned, they have stuff like Chingari. I can't remember the other names, but like they all exist, and they're telling these very very small town stories that you and I wouldn't relate to, but there is an audience for that. So it's
Yeah.
very cool to see how it's just so easy to make these films and anybody can tell their story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's also really nice to see how, like, if there's like any like a tiny instance like in your life, like you know how like in general, like generally in like films you see like all of these like interesting like complex characters and like these intricate plots lines with like multiple subplots and things like that. But like now all of us are just like making like characters out of ourselves and sort of like representing ourselves as like the main character of our life and um I guess just sort of using our own lives as like the central plot lines for our stories. Just talking about, like you said, like people like in India and like even like otherwise like all around the world with like reels and things like that. Like I remember initially like the first time I downloaded TikTok, I saw so many just reels about people talking about like summer. Like this summer, I and there's like a bunch of like scrapbooking of like small videos and like pictures, but like also like this like voiceover behind it. And I feel like it's just that's what it feels like. It feels like this great scrapbook of like all of these things, and also like a really interesting way to like preserve your memories, I guess, just to think of like, oh yeah, so I had like this TikTok series about like my summer vacation. I remember there was this um one girl on TikTok who like her parents had like gone away on like vacation and couldn't like come back in time. And so they were like in lockdown in another country or something like that. And so she was an interior designer, and so she decided to just completely like do like gut their entire house and
Yeah.
fully renovate it.
Yeah.
And it was like a month, like not even a month long, more than that maybe. It was like a 25-part series or something. And there's so many people just like eagerly watching, like, oh my god, where did you get those floorboards? Oh my god, tell me about that. And there's so many people like, eagerly learning about it as well, which is super interesting.
Yeah. I remember watching that. I watched all of it. I was just like, I want to see the end result. Like, I want to see how shocked her parents would be.
Yeah.
It's also a great way to like, I mean, the whole like main character thing, like we're all the main characters of our life. It's also a very interesting thing to like wanting to romanticize your life, especially at a time when life feels so dear, like dreary, and it just seems important to do it. But at the same time, I feel like there's a lot of pressure on the flip side to want your life like to look perfect as it does online. But
Yeah.
it is just
Yeah.
very fun to like, yeah, preserve memories. I'd say it's made the best, like it's made the most normal people into filmmakers, which I really appreciate. Like
Yeah.
amongst friends also. Yeah, like it's just very funny. They
Around, like,
already
on those
have the
same.
edit.
Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, no. They already have the edit while they're recording, which is very funny to see. Yeah. And then what do you see?
I was just saying, I was just similar way, just like people are telling their own stories, but there are also like stories in general that are out there, right? Like some, I mean, yeah, there are stories. There are stories that everyone knows, and these stories also can be told in different ways. So when people take up these stories, everyone shoots it and shows it and tells it in their own way. So there's like you can see the same story in different perspectives, which is also very interesting. So that was the
Yeah,
point.
the whole like adaptation concept, right? It's so interesting. Like it's gone from adapting like literature to literally adapting this theme or this format as many forms as possible. Oh
Yeah,
no.
Like
yeah,
there's like
yeah, yeah.
one sound from like Instagram Reels or like TikTok, the same audio that'll be circulated in different ways, and like people are talking about like all sorts of things. The same audio, people are using it to talk about like fandom. Like people are talking about like One Direction. People are talking about like the new film that came out. People are talking about Star Wars. People are talking about politics using the same audio, and I think it's
Yeah,
so
just the amount of people using it for criticizing politics, it is so unique because you're going to get the attention of like youngsters, you're going to get those laughs, you're going to get somebody sharing it, and like you don't know what impact it'll have, but somewhere down there is like one tickle impact at least from that stupid meme that people make. So yeah, for sure, this is super.
Outfit trend that turns into a political statement, which is best kind.
Such a great way to spread a message, like no reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like throw it into something that already people are clicking. That's what people like Zomato are really doing well, I'd say, in this kind. Dunzo. They're doing it really well in terms of like grabbing these little that are already existing and like adapting it to their platforms. Like make it fun to share.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I also think that like just because I feel like this sort of like accessibility to like a lot of platforms has been here for like maybe not like 10 years or like 5 years even, but like at least for the last like 2 to 3 years, like it's been around. But I feel like right now all of us have either like come into using it, making the most of it, or just sort of like swallowing whatever resistance we were holding towards like new medium, like you said, because we hold buy into like just got there in our head.
Yeah.
And just moving on, and I feel like that accessibility is so interesting for like maybe people like students or like people who are like studying things like film, um, and especially being away from campus, like school campuses when you don't have access to like I guess
Equipment.
the same
Like,
type of like equipment, like you can still I guess practice in some way and like still incorporate telling stories into your like own life without like having like a giant tripod and like a huge ass camera and things like that.
You can create a mise en scène just like without having full equipment also. Like
you need
DIY
a
it.
phone. Yeah, you just need a phone, natural light at this point. You need nothing else whatsoever. And like
Yeah,
a good internet connection, I'd say. Like that's something again that has come like in the last few years, which seems like, which is why it's sort of blown up along with these shows. Like everything sort of came together, which is kind of crazy. And even for students, it's like not just students, but like something like YouTube, I guess, is a good example. Like the more one of the most successful YouTubers are the people who started with their phones, and then still shoot with their phones. Like there's no need for them to upgrade because the iPhone 12 or whatever the last one is exceptionally good to its very day. Like it can challenge any of the other like DSLR or like mirrorless cameras that are available.
yeah.
You don't need high equipment. Yeah.
I was listening to this other podcast, I think a couple of days ago, while I was like cleaning my cupboard or something. Because I need something to listen to while I do long, strenuous tasks like that.
Yes.
And it was like a bunch of YouTubers, and they were talking about how they started off with like filming videos like on their webcam.
Yeah.
Um,
You can see
and
them cutting. Like you can see them like go like this and then they like cut every time they're editing.
yeah,
Yeah.
Very interesting to see from that to this.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess to also just see like, I mean, like for like a bunch of like old school YouTubers, like I'm guessing like a lot of them started with like phones and um like webcams and things like that. But like a lot of like YouTubers who are starting like right now, um, I guess like a lot of like younger kids have already like started filming with the help of like cameras and things like that, which is great that you do have access to such equipment. But like even in the space that where even at a time when you don't have such access, I feel like the um I feel like it's you're not really limited to the kind of stories that you would tell, like for example, um because we have like online classes now, the last couple of semesters, in our film classes, everything is really just we've just been filming with things around the whole around like our houses. My grandmother has become my central character in all of my assignments. She is the star
Yeah.
of the show. Um, like truly such a natural actor. Um, and
You're
um,
forced to observe your surroundings at this point of time, and it's a very fun challenge to be on. Like
yeah,
not make up a story, but like actually observe there are very interesting things happening around you. You just
yeah.
hadn't the time to pause and
And
look.
I think something that at least I've like realized is that generally when we would be like back on campus with having like so much of like equipment and things like that, like we would like oftentimes focus a lot like on the technicalities of telling the story, when it comes to lighting, like just like just just things like that, like very technical aspects of it, just because we're taught to learn that way. But I feel like this because like I was filming on my phone and there is very
Mm.
little control that I have, and I would prefer to film everything in natural lighting. There is more, I guess, experimentation that I would allow myself to do when it came to like the story itself. Um, and so I feel like now with just students and like people otherwise who like either have assignments like this or not, we're like going we're like moving in a different direction to like make our work more interesting and sort of tell stories differently, I guess, which is also really fun. And I didn't think it would happen because I remember the first month I came back home, I was like, how are we going to do this? What is going to happen? But like 10 months in,
Adapt. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And I think the most important part of this whole pandemic has been the stories we've been telling. Like, there's no longer emphasis on like almost creating high art. It's more of like creating as much as possible, like how raw can you get and like how true to yourself you get. because like that's what we want to experience right now. We want to experience like people sharing emotions and telling a story that make us feel empathy and across the country, across the world. Like it's no longer
Yeah.
about aspirational. It's more just like, yeah, this is what's going on, and like it doesn't have to be documented, but it has to be like, yeah, authentic to yourself. And people really connect with like YouTube is the best form of that. I think the best sort of, yeah, truest form of that. Instagram I wouldn't say is, but even some level still captures that sense of authenticity, because you can't seem to drive against yourself unless you are very true in some sense. Some people have to connect you, and that's very interesting that vlogs are doing that. I would not have thought like this. Tamanna and I were talking about this whole idea of how it's this weird form of voyeurism that's bringing us together. That we're looking at those others, their lives, their details of their lives, like
Mm.
their babies and this and that, and how very like easy to connect with them. And those are those are not stories they're writing or fabricating in any way to the most part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I
So
think it's also like I think something that I guess felt while looking at a lot of content that was created during the pandemic is that a lot of stuff is like you said, it's so simple and so easy to connect to, so much so that every time I watch it, I feel like, I could make that.
yeah.
Like
And
I
you
have these thoughts and like it's so cool to like keep
Yeah.
like making these things up because like I am thinking the same thing. It's like this weird like just feeling of like, oh my god, how do I like scream same these across like this these like giant like internet space? I don't know. And like you see so many people like
yeah.
commenting on it as well, like, oh my god, I do the same thing. Or like you said, like with vlogs and things like that, like there's just so many different like types of things that people are like interested like in seeing, like what is inside your fridge, watching my like 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 telling people about their pets and things like that. Like it's so amusing. And
Brand of yogurt you eat.
yeah, and there'll be like freaking like hundreds of comments either saying things like, like, oh my god, I eat the same thing. Have you tried like the peach flavor? Oh my god, it's so good. I recently switched to this other brand, but I actually prefer this one over that one. And there's just so much conversation.
And it's constant. It's not even like you have to wait for a response
Yeah.
like later. It's not a form of, I wouldn't call it gratification, but interaction. Yeah, in that sense. It's very immediate, and that feels very that feels like the norm. Like I don't think I can ever go back to a life where it isn't the norm, obviously. But it almost feels like entering on like the world Her had. Like if you remember the movie Her, we're
Yeah.
heading in that direction at this point, where we're going to have that much interaction with like the 3D world,
Mm.
not 3D, yeah, virtual world.
Yeah. I think
Oh,
any sort of connection is super fulfilling at this point. Everything is rewarding.
Even in terms of like you were saying, the whole like everyone just connects particular emotion or whatever. Like talking about the small form like comics that you see online, or like something like dancing, just those like 9 panels. He tells a story in those 3 little 9 panels, and there's no way you can't somehow find connection that like resonates with you. Sitting in India, he might have told a story about like America, and it's still going to connect you. Yeah, even the whole like even everything in it's hard not to see like the resemblance, and like every time I hear an American tell their story on YouTube or anything, it's like we're in the same boat at this point. Yeah, to feel that, I guess, form of helplessness and like a form of hope in some.
I mean,
Yeah.
like, kind of on the same topic, but like, uh, yeah, there is this comic on Instagram who makes deep dark fears, I think, and they essentially have like a Google sheet where they ask for people's deep dark fears, and you can go put your name and you can put down your fear and stuff, and they make comics about it. They'll make comics about like, yeah, like small things, like, how sometimes you feel like your head is full of so many memories, that after a point you're just like, what if I forget everything? Like that's a fear, and then that is illustrated, and people relate to that all over the world. And he's like published books and stuff about it also now. So yeah.
That's so cool.
Even something like true crime, like there's a community around just retelling true crime stories
Oh my
on
God.
every platform I have ever seen.
That's
I'm
so
a proud member of that community. It is frightening to see how involved people get after.
Yeah.
cool. Honestly,
So it's a very like every medium possible. It's been done at this point. Like it started with, I would say, like a story, like a novel or something, and like graphic novels again. Like in the middle, just had such a resurgence, and I'm so happy with it. But if you talk about it, like digitally, podcasts have been the thing to have like brought it back entirely, and like you can't stop listening to it. Like it's as simple as I'm like putting a little bit of foley in the background of like something rustling, but you're transported to that experience entirely. How can we just hearing something be feeling so much more than us sitting in our own little bubble here in Bombay? So,
you're so right. There was this one YouTuber a couple of years ago. I mean, I'm sure he's still around, called Cryotic on YouTube. And he would do these like I don't know, like these readings of like creepypasta stories and like other things that he would it was sort of like where he would put you into that situation and he's like narrating it. Sort of like you're not sure if the door is locked and like whatever. You see this person standing across like the kitchen window. Um, you like like reach for your phone to like call 911. You look up and this person's gone, but you
funny.
hear breathing behind you. It's just listen. I was in seventh grade and I remember like listening to it and just waiting like that night. Like I literally had to like lie like still in bed until like I saw the sunrise. I was like, I cannot, I can't. And like to this day, like I'll still like continue doing that. Like Netflix had a series recently called Unsolved Mysteries. There's
Yeah,
always been like BuzzFeed Blue, like Unsolved. Like it's just
they're
constantly,
besties, I would say.
yeah. And I feel like
Yeah.
the way that people want to like engage in these stories is just because either it's interesting or like they can't stop because it's either scary and they want to know every possible way anything can happen so that they can like save themselves. I don't know. Um, it's just so much. It's everywhere. Like everyone wants to talk about. Like the other day, I saw. I was like, I came across this like person doing like a mukbang, and she was like narrating like true crime stories, and there was so much reception on like her YouTube videos, and like um, yeah, it's really great to just
A
see how.
weird combo, but works. You know what's another like because you said seventh grade, I started thinking of this. It's this like at least in the seventh grade, I was obsessed with reading fan fiction, like
Oh
Harry
yes,
Potter
so
stuff.
that's a big
Yeah,
topic.
yeah, and it is such a great way of storytelling in the sense of like making up your narratives. And what I think about that's what has like led to this moment. I feel like we're all sort of like making our own narratives, even with ourselves, sort of fantasizing our lives and like trying to figure out what comes next in that sense. And in terms of like creepy stories, not just like true crime, but something like Reddit is like a great way of like sharing your story text form. You're anonymous, but it's so involved. People might end up even writing your story. People might even end up like solving your story in that sense. But there's this constant need to share what's going on, like what narrative currently is like creating this big scene, this big theme in your life. And it's so interesting to see how like people are taking to like different mediums to still tell. Like of course writing is still gonna be the one that continues, but in a very visual world, it's interesting to see like how we take different mediums to sort of yeah tell narratives
Yeah.
better suited for different narratives. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of Reddit stories also get taken up by like YouTubers and filmmakers, and then
Yeah.
obviously they give credit to them. But those stories like come into visual form as well, like at some point.
Yeah.
So yeah.
yeah. I remember like at one point of time, like Suji said, like there was fan fiction. Like I
Mhm.
remember there was I remember a time when the only conversation that I could think of was like the debate between like AO3 and like WhatsApp, like which side will you take? But I
Yeah.
feel like that like the same sentiment behind like writing like fan fiction and things like that has somehow like also like been transferred to like fan cams and things like that now, which is so like it's so impressive to see how we have all like evolved, but also we are still like watching the same things and like amused by the same things, you know?
Because even during fan fiction, they try to insert themselves into the story. Somehow they like they have written characters for themselves in that sense, and
Yeah.
they're doing exactly that with stuff
One
like
Direction Imagine.
yeah.
I remember. I remember.
What
Um,
about yeah.
so now that we talk about like now that we've spoken about this increasing accessibility of like mediums and platforms and how all of us are sort of we've all become storytellers, and I feel like that is something that we can take pride in because there's so many people who want to watch our content, can relate to it, or like look forward.
Mm.
Do you think the democratization of these creative tools will take away from like the allure of films and cinema? Do you think just like because of how accessible it has become and how now everyone can tell a story that like um it will make maybe like super highly produced films like less, I can't think of a word, but like maybe let's say enchanting as like let's keep that as like a placeholder because I can't think of another.
I don't think it'll ever not be enchanting. I mean,
Mm.
it'll always be
A
enchanting. Like a
phase of
big,
it.
seeing a like a
Yeah.
big budget film and like all the things that they've done for it and stuff. Yeah, that'll always be enchanting. But also, these new forms of storytelling are just I don't know how to frame it.
And making those even better, I'd say. Like they're pushing those to become even better than like before. Like people
Yeah.
can have been able to tell like these fast like fantasy narratives almost sitting in their own rooms creating this tiny like I guess set is the right word, yeah, sorry, with like macro lenses and stuff, but it's innovation in some like on some level into the bigger screens, like it's pushing them to get even better. So I don't think it's ever going to be less enchanting because technology on some level is always going to be pushing it forward. Not just that, it's just that there are some purists who are never going to let cinema die, which is a great thing. Like, none of us want that to happen. We just wanted to get better and better. And I think the audience for both things are the same, but they're going to different spaces expecting very different experiences. Like, they're not going to, while they might get a cinema esque quality on YouTube, they're not going to be enjoying it in the way it's intended to, right? Like a cinema in like completely surrounded by like darkness, the sound and all, you're gonna appreciate it because it's not a controlled environment. That's yeah, like YouTube just can't provide that. TikTok cannot provide that. Like something you see on a subway, like when you're on a subway, it's not gonna have the same experience. You're not signing up for that. You know you're not signing up for that when you go onto these. So the quality might be great, but the entire movie going experience is just like you can't compare it.
That also like I mean there are also films that come from like low budget and like taking the example of Blair Witch, like or like Paranormal. Those are like one camera, two camera, and they're not really great in quality or anything, but they go to becoming big pictures because it is that good. They've created it so well. So yeah, there can be like this shift between them also, like where even if it's low in quality and low budget, it can go into like a mass
Yeah.
where people really like it.
I
So
think
yeah,
at the crux of it, it's the how good is the story and how is it going to like relate to people. So again, Blair Witch is such a ridiculous story to be honest, that it just connect and like you have to give it the money. Like even What We Do in the Shadows, stuff like that. It is such an absurdist film in that sense. Like Taika Waititi, legend. He was doing very low budget work before he started doing anything we have seen like in the past 2 to 3 years. But it's kind of funny to see like low budget reach that stage. It's like it's still this aspirational end goal in some way for some of these creators. Maybe not all, maybe not the ones who've been democratized, but it's such an aspirational goal. Like nobody's ever gonna refuse like their screen, like their film on a big screen. That is a different experience. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think also maybe just because there are so many people that are like engaging with like making films or like making stories, because like you said, now my mother knows how to like cut and like use like a voiceover even through Instagram videos. I feel like um there might be like a newfound like appreciation to people who
Yeah.
like do this work like professionally, you know. Like let it be like a super crisp
Yeah.
like voiceover or like in like a really like hectic like montage or something like in a film. Like, cause like I feel like we just
Not just
automatically,
appreciation, sorry, but like even expectation. Like they
yeah,
will want
Mm.
to, they will go in like better story, which is exactly what we wanted to happen. Like for the, I mean, a lot of stories have been racing for sure, but there is at least that appreciation for like, oh, the effort that went into this, and like there is craft, there's some to like write. It's no longer just this like lonely, depressed artist sitting in a corner. You tell happy stories, you can tell good stories like filmmaking with TikTok, any of it, but people are going to go into like films, the traditional kind, expecting like you to match this or even better. Like if you come out, why are we backward at all? Yeah.
Yeah, that's there. People have started appreciating like good filmmaking, like even if it's not like showbazy and stuff. I don't know. I think somebody had made this point to me saying when Stree came out,
Mm.
the horror Bollywood film, and as compared to like other Bollywood films that came out, Stree did really well, and it was
Mm.
not like a very typical Bollywood film with like
Yeah.
music numbers and all of that stuff. It was just a story that was told, but it did really well, and it was the filmmaking was done really well. So like people have started appreciating good films, good filmmaking,
Yeah.
and more
Even
storytelling than just like
yeah.
Bollywood drama.
Even something like Sacred Games, it came out of our country. It was a really good thing. I mean, obviously, there's a whole like sideline, marginalized in like cinema track in that sense, which is making really good films. Like art films have always been great, but the mainstream have like again, Saif Ali Khan can do such good work. He just again like the script hadn't come out, and like you adapt a really good book to make a really good series can come out of this country, can be very very experimental, brand new. Like it felt like such a breath of fresh air. Even just the like they were so detailed with their title track, like the amount of like detailing they looked into with the I think it was Big Fat Millionaires if I'm not wrong, Anirudh. But they were so careful with curating every part of it. Like that's rare for an indie series, which just to be sort of haphazardly placed together and like made for a general audience, expecting them not to notice or expecting them not to expect good work in that sense. Whereas now we're going into such places expecting quality. No longer can you give us like same old Saas Bahu stories. We're not expecting those. I'm sorry.
yeah.
Yeah.
I also think that lately there's been a lot of newer formats of storytelling that have been emerging. Like the other day we were talking about interactive storytelling and how like video games have sort of taken taken over just like in general. I feel like, and there's um they no more fit this box of like, oh, like it's like Wii tennis or like Pac-Man. Um, but like you said, like there's so much detail and intricacy to just building this world that it feels like this intersection of, oh my God, like I'm living this life, but I'm also like watching like a film, but also it's like not like a film because like I can do what I want, but it's also like a fantasy world, like in a storybook. Like, oh my God, what is happening?
Choose your narrative stories. Yeah. I think Tamanna knows a lot more about video games than I do personally.
I
But
mean, I don't really play video games, but like I mean, I'm sure a lot of people watch streams and gameplays and stuff, and the storytelling is really good, and they kind of like also incorporate it into like if you're playing on like the controller, there are sometimes like two characters, and if one character dies, you can't use one side of your controller or only the other side. Like it's like it also like puts you into that thing. So like you feel incomplete. You're just like, oh, I can't use the other side because my one character is dead. I can only use the other side, and the other characters have to help this character. So when this character needs help, you like kind of move this one around, and it like slowly goes through whatever the task is, and it's like it's very nice. And like I'm sure we spoke about Last of Us. I mean, Last of Us was so well told. Like not that we didn't have to even play it. We watched people play. We watched the story, and it was just so good. It
Yeah.
was an emotional roller coaster.
Sobbing, straight sobbing. I didn't even play it, but like you said, like I watched it and I heard so many people talk about it. I don't even remember how many tears I cried.
But again, I feel like video games are influenced the like purest form of cinema in that sense. Like I remember this movie a few years ago called Darkler, Darkler. I can't remember it. I think it's Richard Linklater. Yeah, it was trying to gamify the film, but that was a very early attempt with Keanu Reeves. And now, if you look at like Ready Player One or like Cyberpunk, they're both like so heavily, you can tell visually in just influenced by video games. Like it is completely an ode to how these animators, these designers are, and like taking those narratives onto the big screen because it deserves that kind of audience almost. Yeah, even something like Bandersnatch, it was trying to give you that choose your narrative kind of experience, which is there because a lot of people are unhappy with endings or unhappy with like these open ends, obviously.
Yeah.
But this was almost fun. Like you got to choose the narrative, you got to choose like the character's trait, and you got to feel the consequence of that trajectory also. Like that's the main thing video games give you, like the way she described. You feel that constraint, like particularly while you're sitting completely out of that screen and that world, but you're still there somehow.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's really so I remember when I was younger and I used to like constantly go to the library to like just books to borrow books. When I was really, really small, there were these Goosebumps books that used to like that had like these situations at the bottom. So it was sort of like, like if you're going to go inside the house without like a weapon, just alone, then proceed to page 75. But if you're going to retreat and go back to your own home and just go to bed in the safety of like whatever, then proceed to page 3 or like whatever. And it was like this little, like small little game inside this Goosebumps novel. And at that point of time, like I was pretty sensed. Like I was like very excited and I would try to go like every single way. Like it became my task to find every single like permutation combination of every possible scenario, like what was the best scenario. Um, I think it's really nice, like you said, to see how video games are just this like integrating this like choose your own narrative type of thing into like either video games or like films in general or like TV shows, whatever it might be. Because I feel like that also, in order to do that, you also need like a pretty sensible understanding of what people would want to pick in order to get there. Because um like in order to like let me make a choice, you like need to know what I'm thinking. And like that, all of us are so different. Um, and like when you sit alone in a room, like if you're sitting in like a crowd of three people, like I'm sure like some people might have like overlapping like opinions because if you might listen to like one person's opinion, you go like, oh yeah, that's much better than mine, but like you're in a room alone. Um, um, yeah, I think in order for so many people to be able to like relate and actually like properly access things like Bandersnatch and things like that, like that must have been like like a like a process.
animation right now has made such a comeback in like such a cool way. Like Rick and Morty, of course, BoJack is another thing. Like you watch a lot more than I do, so you'll be able to talk about it better.
Midnight Gospel.
Oh my God.
Midnight Gospel is so good. Like it's
Again,
essentially a podcast, but animated
yes,
podcast. And
Yeah,
I'm just like,
it
I
really
watched it like so many times. Did you you saw the one where he meets his mother or the
it does. Yeah, yeah. So that first episode was tough into, and then I was like, I can't stop this. Even Mouth, such a weird show.
Yeah, I think it's all like adult swim style shows are just
Yeah.
it's just I don't know. Like
Yeah.
I can't stop watching it. B, most times I can't make sense of it. Then later somehow I can make sense of it. It's like a little bit of a weird process. Like once I leave and like step back, like it takes me like a bit to like understand like what's going on. Like especially with shows like BoJack, like I fully had to like step away from it, go take a walk,
Yeah.
come back, drink some
And
water,
it does that to you. It can still do that to you. That shows like
and
I
reflect what is happening. And recently, because Disney Plus came in recently, I've been watching so much of just the shows that I used to watch, like as a child. I mean,
As
like
ever.
yeah, a lot of a lot of shows that I did watch came from Cartoon Network. Actually, I feel like Cartoon Network just in general has like brilliant shows for um
adults also like in real
yeah
life those
yeah
were
bro.
shows for adults as kids. Like that was the reason I wanted you to like maybe include it because none of these animated shows are for kids in
Yeah.
any way. Like nobody should be
Adventure
watching
Time,
both under 18. I think not okay.
a lot of stuff that was like previously aired on like Cartoon Network as well. Like I've been
Cowards, courage. Wait,
yeah,
sorry,
Courage the
courage the
Cowardly Dog,
cowardly dog.
Courage the Cowardly Dog, Teen
Yeah,
Titans. Oh my God, Adventure Time. Like it's
Oh,
so
and
complex. Like I remember
same.
I used to watch it then, but like I'm watching it now, and I'm like,
And
oh my God,
understanding.
how
Yeah.
did you make these characters? Like I feel like in the last couple of seasons, like something changed in like the creators, like something must have clicked or fall into place or out of place or something, and they
they
just
went into
all
so
like,
many different dimensions. It
yeah,
was just
Yeah.
I was like, what is
And
this?
they are all like 30 plus and they're writing for such a interesting audience. And
Yeah,
like they're trying to shape those minds in some way.
it's
Crazy.
like storylines on steroids.
yeah.
It's incredible.
I really want to check out Last Airbender. I've been hearing such good things.
Oh
Listen,
my god.
listen.
Yeah. Is it something I should really start and like
Yes,
go?
Yes.
you should have. Yes.
So I from in my head I was like, oh, is it like a child's show? But I get bored. But
I think what I've realized now is no animation was ever really meant for a child.
yeah.
It's like, was I too young before to watch this child show? Probably,
But
honestly.
it's very interesting.
Yeah.
See, like it's an allegory, like the way they've written is so interesting that it can work for both audiences. Whereas again, a
It's
Bojack,
entertaining and colorful for kids
yeah,
and
Yeah.
really meaningful for adults as well. So,
Yeah.
but
yeah.
even something like Bojack, from a like outsider's perspective, it looks very nice and colorful and stuff like that. I remember like a lot of my cousins were like, "Oh, should I watch it?" I'm like, "No, if you're under like 18, no, I cannot have your brain break at that age. You do not know anything about the world. This broke me at like 20.
What is it? Self-reflection?
No, because you learn so much about philosophy, not just like
Yeah.
psychology.
It's it's it's
How do you
crazy.
write stories like that?
That's so.
Samaya, can you also talk about when we get back to this? Can you also talk about that show you told me yesterday? Haunting Manor, something
Haunting of Hill House.
that I don't
I mean, that's
know.
just a TV show.
No, but it's interesting that people are like, what is the word for when you give it a human thing? What's the word? Like, what is Inside Out trying to do? Like, it embodies the feeling,
Personified.
Emotion.
personifies
Personified.
human personify. Yes, that's what I was trying to say. But
Yeah.
like, it's so interesting what she described about like it's different stages of grief.
Grief.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is such cool storytelling.
Yeah. I think personification and animation just like in the oh my god, yesterday I was talking to Nitya about this do you guys remember Monster House?
Yeah,
Do you remember that film?
Yeah.
Listen, I couldn't sleep for weeks after that.
I don't
I
know why I watched it. to be
I don't
honest.
know. I watched it one more time after I first watched it, like some 7 years after I first watched it. And
Yeah.
what would I think? Who do I think? Do I think I'm like freaking bulletproof or something? No. No, Jyotsna, you're not.
It's also cool because I feel like because of stuff like BoJack, Rick and Morty, there are movies like Get Out coming, like very absurdist. I mean, not that they're connected, but like very absurdist metaphors for like race and all of that stuff. Like it's so cool to see what's coming out.
I think because like a
Black
lot of these,
Mirror.
yeah, I think because a lot of these like a lot of shows and things like that can see that there is an audience to I guess like consume the things that you're putting out no matter how experimental you think it is, that there is always someone who will either get it or like want to know more and things like that. If
No,
you
like
do,
people are willing to the bubble in that sense. Like they're willing to become self-aware at this point. That's I
yeah,
think that's a huge difference between our generation and the previous generation. Like they are becoming self-aware at like 40.
yeah,
Whereas all of us are, I don't know if it's a good thing actually. We're doing it at like 20 years.
yeah. Think
Yeah.
about all the
Yeah,
self-reflective.
like we know what traumas we've had and what patterns we need to break. Coming back to a TikTok.
You think about like you watching this like extremely um like this one like cartoon TV show at the age of like 7 and thinking it was just about like a dog who lived with like these two people on this barren plot, called the Cowardly Dog, and now you're coming back to it like you're so old and you're like understanding like all of like the subtext and
Yeah,
it's like
and again,
blowing your mind a little bit.
giving you so much empathy for like gray characters.
Mm.
Like, they're no longer crazy in that sense. It's I feel like it's the result of all of these things only more than like what I've watched in the last few years. Like Bojack again, why do I feel bad for I shouldn't. He's like the worst character possible. Feel bad.
Listen,
I
it's
just can't.
entire time I was watching the film, I mean the show, I was like, he is an
Okay.
anti-hero. You need to like how do you go from like I hate this character to but like I guess he also deserves better. It it and especially because you unravel all of the shit he's done. Like first episode, he's like a like not a really nice person, but like you don't know the backstory of anything at that point in time. But you unravel so much more, and then you realize, oh my god, he's a worse person than I thought he was. But here, take my 10 truckloads of sympathy, though. As opposed to like how I felt in like the first episode about you. Like, I still feel like you can, maybe. I mean, I don't really believe that, but like everyone deserves like a little bit better like that, even if you're both are awesome.
Yeah.
I also think it's really interesting how how Bojack Horseman just like it doesn't like the characters aren't all human.
Mm.
Like a lot of them are like just not human. Like there's like a cat, there's like a frog, there's like a horse obviously.
Horse.
There's like one
Oh
more
man.
horse,
Yeah.
one more horse,
Yeah.
just a dog. There's so many different characters and it's so amusing how like you like like watching them and listening to like them talk about things in their stories, like it's more relatable than like you like these stories, like at least to me was more relatable than I would to just someone like a person just talking somewhere.
Mm.
Like seeing this animation made me either reflect more or like I don't know, feel
A
like
reality check by animals, which I
yeah,
find very odd. Yeah.
yeah. How
Some
did that happen?
I completely figure out what my opinion on like happiness and stuff was through animals
Yeah,
that
how
have
did that
been like
happen?
that. And it's such a like it doesn't coddle you in any way, that show. None
Yeah.
of these actually shows are trying to coddle you anymore. Like even Midnight Gospel, for example, it's having very deep conversations while being extremely baked, but they're still like being very critical of the world around them. Like they're talking about the US election in this absurdist metaphorical manner. Stuff like that, which I think a few years ago creators would have shied from talking about because they're scared of losing an audience. Even Bojack, it is so dark in the sense of like there are elements of rape, there are elements of him considering sexual harassment also, not even necessarily doing it. But stuff like that anyone would have shied away from, or like you would have hated the main character immediately the minute he did that. Somehow that animal shows you like shades of gray, and you're able to feel empathetic. And at the end of it, even with everything he's done badly, and like somehow I feel like it makes us better humans for having seen a show like that. And like such narratives are necessary right now more than like especially in the last 1 year. I think we've realized people aren't binaries anymore. Yeah.
I think shows that do portray like extremely complex emotion or like circumstances, like finding out you have like thinking that you have like a daughter
Mm.
somehow somewhere in like when you're having your second midlife crisis and things
Mm.
like that, like just introducing like people to such plot lines that isn't very, like I wouldn't just say like cookie cutter, but just nothing that you would have really thought about, is like really, I guess, like opening audiences into consuming different types of film as well. Like if there was a film that was going to be made about like let's say like a 47-year-old finding out that she had like a daughter or something. And like she came to like find her father or whatever, the entire film would be about that, you know? But like the show is sort of making it like, oh, but this happened, but then there is also all of this. Like it doesn't, um I guess it doesn't like a lot of things that could have been made like entirely different situations about sort of like act as like wallpapers in the show just because of um how I guess how the makers are trying to like bring just the emotions of the characters to the forefront. Like their situation barely really matters. It's
Yeah.
like it's very this character's feeling like this, although this is what they're
But okay, somehow the show and like somehow I feel like a lot of animation does this very well, and like which is why I think people are using the medium so much right now. Is that when you're doing a real like a what do you call it, like stories with humans and like actual actors, it is hard to encapsulate just beyond the like immediate context they're in. Like it's hard to like you can put Easter eggs and stuff like that, but something I feel like Midnight Gospel, BoJack, all of these have really exploited in that sense is the concept of like Easter eggs to try and like impact you just beyond the first storyline or the second storyline. It's
yeah
gone beyond that like layer of you what you see. Like there are so many details in the background that like somehow will connect. There's a comment about like the philosophy of the creators. There's the comment on like what's going on in the world. Everything
Mm-hmm.
somehow like it goes beyond what I think a normal film can do to a person, like, which is insane, like which is what I think animation is. Like it's always been my favorite category at first cut also because people just push themselves beyond imagination. Like so yeah.
I
What do
think
you think, Tamanna?
I mean, yeah, I agree with what you said. Animation is
Number one.
has its own like layer of storytelling. Yeah.
And even the ones we saw as kids were going back to us adults. So
yeah
it's pretty unique in that sense as a medium.
I think shows that employ like really experimental narratives like this to sort of open up the world for like filmmakers just to see that, you know, hey, like if you are going to make like a film that you consider experimental, there will still be an audience that will consume it. I mean, it might not be as commercial or like it might not appeal to like the larger masses as you expect it to.
Mm.
Um, or like the message might not reach that far maybe right now, but there is still a growing audience who is willing to consume it, just because of how we're slowly being introduced to it, I guess, like through like slowly through like TV shows or like this realization that things that we have watched before actually came with like several other undertones that we just were not able to detect before.
Yeah. I mean, a good example of that, like having undertones, is like I don't know if you've seen it, A Haunting of Hill House. In essentially, it's about like five kids who were haunted in a house, and and I mean now they're all grown up. Like they're it's a non-linear storytelling narrative, and like so that what the director has done is that all five of the children are different stages of grief. So
Mm.
there is denying, there is bargaining, there is depression, there is acceptance, and there's one in the middle that I forget. But yeah, so like people wouldn't usually notice these kinds of things before, and now it's become a reason why somebody watches a show, that they have these kind of messages through their uh, characters.
Yeah. Even something like Inside Out again was so similar to this, like embodying these feelings. And again, such a great way to tell kids about this, like at a very young age, like sort of penetrate that little layer, which they don't know at that point in time. It's actually going into their heads. But we're also going back to it and like actually adults, even something like Soul, it's like,
Soul, yeah.
yeah, it's expecting us to like reflect once we leave the theater. It's no longer just, we know that we watched it in theaters, but you know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. Even non-linear narratives is a very interesting point she brings up, because that's something that's, I don't want to call it like hot in the last few years, but it's always been around. But now there's an explosion of it where people are willing to watch non-linear narratives, and people are willing to just not go in expecting a traditional three act structure or any of it. They're completely
Yeah.
expecting people to like throw the rule book out. We've done it for a long time. Show us what you got.
Um, so
Something
now,
like, sorry, even something like Jobs, which is a very strange example to give for non-linear narratives, but it was such a interesting way of telling a documentary. Instead of saying like born here, dead here, it went like it followed the kid's track versus his track. Like it went backward. It was very interesting to like actually engage with his mind at two different places. Like that was the cool part of it. Like how did his mind evolve, not necessarily just his boring trajectory as a person. It was his craziness was that mind of his, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
I think now that we've spoken about just how accessible storytelling is to everyone, how everyone has become a storyteller, and just the intricacy in telling stories, whether that's in animation or video game, um, or like anything else, and how like everyone can take part in it somehow and participate in telling stories. Do you think storytelling um, like sort of boils down to just believable or amusing plot lines and characters that the audience would be interested in?
I don't think so, Vibha. I feel like they're trying to again go beyond. Like you want to be surprised, right? You also want to know things you don't know, I guess. Like this is a slightly strange example, but I'm obsessed with watching these videos from Svalbard, which is a place near Norway. Again, it's not a life I can ever imagine, but it's incredibly unique to see. Like I don't think I'll ever go there or anything, but they have polar bears around them, and like they carry a gun, which is like just the norm for them. Like stuff like that is where I think you want to be shocked. You want to learn more than anything. Amusing, of course, like in every form. I think you don't need it to be believable, I guess, at all times.
No, it doesn't have to always be believable, I think. But like, yeah, I think most characters are amusing if you put them in the right story also.
Yeah.
And there usually is a right story. That's why they're telling it. But like, yeah, their characters, yeah.
And you're going to relate with someone, I might not, but I'm going to relate with some other part of the story. And
Yeah.
it's so easy to find that human connection somewhere. Because at the end of it, we're all very similar. So I don't think the plot line matters as much as like, I guess the human element of it. Like even when somebody falls, you're still going to laugh, but feel a little sad at the end of it. And like that's what TikTok is in that sense. Like you're
Yeah.
seeing stupid things, you feel bad, but at the same time, it's incredibly funny. You can't help it. It's just human. It's okay. Yeah.
There is this, I think I was telling Siddhi about it, that there is this, I don't know their name, but this is Sid on Instagram. And
Oh my God.
yeah, made like a three-part
Oh, fuck,
series
so
about
excited.
his sister.
Yeah.
and it's so good. Like it doesn't have to like completely be like true. Like I don't think some of the things that
Mhm.
his sister is doing are true, but like he made a narrative around her. He made this series, and it's so good. Like it, like everyone can relate to it, and the character that he's created of his sister is so fun to watch and so like interesting.
So
Like, I want to be
simple.
your friend. You're so
Yeah, and
cool.
so simple.
You think like like those same kind of thoughts we have, and just yeah, it's a good way of telling
It's
a
the
story.
same thing you said, which is about like looking at a toothpaste with a different perspective. Like
Yeah.
every morning you look at that. Every morning you look at your sister. Do you think of her as
Yeah.
like a character in the story? You don't. But once you see this, you almost end up like laughing, thinking about like the quirks you might have noticed in your own sister.
Yeah.
It's so simple as her like not throwing away something. That's the entire plot line of his video. And
Can
okay, another interesting part is it felt very somehow it captured a very basiness, basiness and the non-basiness of it, because it feels like an Wes Anderson film set in like Kolkata, or I don't know. I'm assuming it
yeah.
looked like a very normal Indian household, but with so much color, so much. You just don't imagine this would be how like an Indian household looks, like a
Yeah.
traditional. It's very
Yeah.
punchy, very fun, but so desi at the end of it.
It was so good.
Yeah.
With all the people like around the world, like telling their stories, talking about their pets, their sisters, their things that they're making, like things that they're cooking, like thoughts they have in their head and things like that. How how has all of this like shaped your understanding of the world now? Like because now you're engaging with more content than ever from like all around the world.
Tamanna, go for it.
So how
I
has
mean, there
that?
is so much knowledge, right? Like there is so much we're taking in. It also, I mean, you're learning so many things, but it also feels like that's like, oh my god, that's like too much to take in also at
Yeah.
the same time. And but yeah, I mean, I feel like especially in the pandemic, like the stories we've seen, it's like, oh, we're all in the same boat, but also not at the same part of the boat. Like some people
Yeah.
require an anchor, some people require a life jacket right now, some people need food, some people you know what I mean, like we're all on the same boat but doing different things and going through different things. So yeah, it's been interesting to see. Yeah.
I think personally, it's also very interesting to like zoom out and think about like human history in the sense that we are a very, very small part of human history. Like I remember our EVS class, which told us like we are like 0.0000 something percent of human history in a sense. We're going to be, I mean, now forward from here, we're going to be the part of history that has the most documentation of all time. There's going to be no doubt of how life was in that sense. There's ample evidence telling you of like every corner of this country, like this planet, how it was at
Yeah,
this particular time.
yeah,
Like the pandemic is obviously going to be the most like documented. And like coming back to what Tamanna is saying also about like all of us being at like different stages in that sense, and like the different parts of that boat we need. I'm really hoping I think it's heading in this direction, is that it ends up inducing this worldwide sense of empathy and like understanding, because you are aware of what the like other side looks like. There's no longer an excuse to say, oh, I don't know what's going on in like the global south. There just isn't. It's
yeah.
all out there. You need to go out there and learn. Like
You have to
you,
like
it's
you have
not
to
hard
shut your
to,
eyes to not see it.
yeah, exactly. You will be like responsible for shutting your eyes at that moment and like ignore what's going on in that sense. So I think it's a very interesting thing that we all are different parts of this boat, but we can all visibly see and like help the other person out also. And that's what's been interesting over the last like 8 9 months. Is like I think all of us have been able to not just our own friends across like countries and like platforms and stuff like that, but also like connect with creators in that way. Like as simple as like YouTubers, like there is that sense of like almost connection, like people we watch, and you do see like it's gone beyond just them being like us being audience in that sense. We've gone beyond that point. We've gone to the point of being like part of a community. all of that. They're no longer entertainers also, I'd say, but we're no longer just consumers. We're very active in this process. That's super cool. And that's, I think that's formed my sense of like, yeah, like empathy and understanding of the next few years, I hope. Yeah.
That was really well said.
Thank you.
It could be. Like, when you think about like storytelling and stories in general, I feel like there are certain like points in like you said, like in history where you can sort of like pinpoint where there was like a turn, I guess, in like how things were made. Like with like let's say like the advent of like newer technology or like whatever, you know. And I feel like the pandemic might be such like that sort of like a space where like communication and storytelling and just interaction worldwide to sort of like takes a different like turn, but for the better, because now, like you said, we know more about everything than we ever have before, just because it's everywhere. And in order for you to like not see it, you have to actively close your eyes and then take responsibility for closing your eyes. Um,
I think it's not just about accessibility, and it's also about like sharing stuff like that. Like there are very simple ways to like engage with this story because you're part of this largely, of course. And even just amplifying voices has become so easy because these people have been able to like access platforms and like share their stories. But again, I guess we're not the global north or anything, but as the 1% of this country, it's so easy for us to realize our privilege like right there. Like Dalit stories, stuff. All of it has just come to the forefront in this 1 year of the pandemic. I wouldn't say even before that it was ever like discussed in this realization that us as not just as I guess brought up in like metropolitan cities or anything, but even being very aware of like what religion we belong to, even if we don't follow it, stuff like that. It's become very important and like giving them their space and giving them the platform has become so yeah key at this point of time in this whole story. So I do think we're heading in the right direction. I hope that's all I'm gonna.
Now that we're coming to the closing of this podcast episode, what kind of mediums have you guys been engaging with now? Like, what do you think is like the most entertaining, or like when you're not doing anything, like what do you put on, like either on your phone or like you listen to things, you like watch something, like what are your favorites? We want to know.
I think personally, I've been. I think personally, I've been like engaging with podcasts a lot more, and not just like. I mean, have this very educational aspect to it, but they have,
Ew.
yeah, this one, but they have become so closely like tied with storytelling, I guess, in that sense, and it's been a very comforting thing in the sense like go back to how we used to hear stories from like our grandparents and stuff like that when we were kids, we would do right and like stuff like the Mahabharata, you would just imagine it every night when you hear about the battle and this and that. So it's kind of cool to hear like these grandmas from our world telling us the little stories from their lives, or like again true crime, of course. But it's kind of cool that even again in this whole grand scheme of history, we're going back to this oral history practice, and yeah, it's cool to see where we go next. And it's a very comfortable sort of ancient practice to put into our technological and also too visual a world. So this is a nice break to miss. What about you, Tam?
I mean, I've also been indulging in a lot of podcasts. I mean, I don't really read books, so it's a good way to read. I mean, to listen to books. So
Yeah,
I end up like listening to books a lot and podcasts of like short stories and just history stuff. That's been nice. And obviously, I mean, streams like spend 6 hours watching a whole stream of somebody playing games, talking about politics, talking about watching like stupid things happen on the internet. Yeah.
somebody playing chess is so interesting on stream. I don't understand why, but it works. Like these streams are so cool. And they are so simple in the sense like it's one camera setup. There's nothing else to it. Yet people don't look away.
Yeah. Like people playing like Among Us, just YouTubers just with like their like subscribers and things like that, just playing Among Us. It's so cute.
Again, it's also that instant
Um,
connection with people.
on yeah,
Yeah. Go on.
I think on that note, we hope that everyone listening has like us talking about stories, and we hope like you either like we hope you feel the same when it comes to like a lot of these things, and I hope that you connected with us with our stories of us talking about stories. What?
as
Um,
non-experts.
Yes.
as non-experts, we are in no way any type of
Yeah.
professionals. We are just
Even
um,
though Tamanna and I
solid
like to write
lovers.
stories together, I will say that about us, but we're not experts.
we're all like still students at
Yeah.
heart.
Yeah,
Is it?
three students. Um, but thank you so much for coming on to the Beanbag Archive, Tamanna and Siddhi. It's been so rewarding and fulfilling to like finally sit down and have like a chat. It's been so long like since we saw each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
All our
Yeah,
chai times have been converted into just Zooms.
Yeah.
So, this was so fun. Thank you, guys.
yes. Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah. We're big supporters of this event, actually.
We
Would
love First
completely
Cut.
recommend 12 on 10.
Yeah, and keep up with you can keep up with us on our Instagram page at flame_first cut for more updates and cool information and just fun stuff all around. Do you guys, Tamanna, do you also want to shout out your Instagram handles? Where can they
I'm
find your work?
he Asher. It'll be somewhere here, I guess.
I don't remember mine.
I think it's just Tamanna Raju. But let me check. Give me a second. Smooth, guys.
We'll put it in the description of the podcast.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, guys. See y'all.
Bye.